Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spinner Rack. I'm here with the boys PD and Kyle. Once again, I'm back in my own natural feelings right now. So we're discussing right now. The discussion is the fact that we all know, without a doubt, without a doubt, that the Avengers were not the primary characters, because the primary characters of the sale when Marvel was having a hard time back in the 90s were Spider-Man, X-Men, Hulk, Punisher. They were all sold or licensed off to someone else. That's why we have X-Men became a Fox property. That's why Spider-Man became a Sony property, you know. And here we're having a discussion with interesting discussion, just so these two gentlemen understand the fact that the reason those properties, the most popular properties of Marvel, were no longer around is because they were taken. And that's why the Marvel had to, when they created Marvel Studios, they had to go
Well,
back
okay,
to the Avengers, such as Thor,
he
such as
correct me
Iron
if I'm
Man.
wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't weren't the rights to the Fantastic Four in terms of film rights, weren't those sold off well before Marvel got into any trouble and had to sell off everything else? If I remember the history of this
I,
correctly, those rights were sold. Okay, this guy wanted to make I forget the name of the guy, but he wanted to make the movie. Marvel didn't want him to do anything, so he made a craptastic movie and said, "I'm going to pretty much put this out." Marvel's like, oh, "Okay, we'll play ball at the end of the day." But the Fantastic Four film rights were sold off well before
okay.
anything that Mars is talking about.
All right, so let's just stand corrected. Some of the rights were already sold, but the point I'm trying to make is that the most popular rights were sold previously. Okay, and so that one of the reasons they had to start going back to the well to Marvel, they had to pick up characters that were not quite as popular. And I'm going to say it right now. Unfortunately, I know now everybody says Iron Man is the greatest thing since cooked food, but guess what? Back then, Iron Man was not as popular
All right,
as
this
X
this
Men and
thing
Spider Man.
this thing
Okay,
came out. This argument happened because I was just saying the non-profitability of Marvel is something that's strange. When you have corporate raiders, they take everything, right? And then they parse out what they want to use and this, that, and the other. And Marvel at the same time was developing Avengers cartoons. They did the Iron Man cartoon. They also did the Fantastic Four cartoon. So
yeah,
in
man.
my mind, the only thing that was holding Marvel back in the past was, they say, Doctor was it Howard the Duck is what made Marvel properties toxic. Hence why we only got Spider Man and His Amazing Friends, and we didn't get a real X Men cartoon till what, like '92. So it's just like, my idea is that the hard part is, yes, the Fantastic Four, Avengers, Iron Man was stuff that was selling less than the stuff that the X Men and Spider Man. But at the point of '92, Marvel was a big. They had stock. They went public. They had a stock. They were looking for movies. They got Spawn. What other movies they had there? So it's like the idea that the Avengers before that time were not something that they could have found a way to make profitable. That's all I was trying to say, is that this idea that somehow everyone got the notice that the Avengers was, they can't do anything with the Avengers, when the first movie they put out was Blade. And there was no profit margin for Blade outside of the interest that Wesley Snipes had in it. That's all I was trying to say.
What we were trying to, I get what you're saying, Petey, but you keep throwing in the whole TV, and we're talking about like when they went bankrupt, what, 95, 96. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the movies. We're not talking about the TV shows. We're saying that because when they said, hey, when Sony got a hit off of Spider-Man, and they're like, hey, let's look back at what we have and see what we can use. They said, hey, let's go for Iron Man because we can sell some toys off of that, when they did the testing,
But
right? So
Iron
that's
Man
the
was
point I'm trying
something
to
that
make.
they were selling. They were optioning from time like all of the Marvel properties were optioning. It just wasn't happening. They had Tom Cruise connected to Iron Man. They already did a Captain America thing, which was terrible. But they were optioning these characters as they were going along, right? And they were developing the crash of Marvel is with the Toy Biz and Heroes World thing. That was the full crash. It wasn't that these Avengers weren't selling, but it's just like, I get what you're saying. That's the thing that they're saying. I'm just saying the idea of them going with Blade first, and you have Iron Man, and you have things that you could say, well, I can see something cool in this character. You can make a movie out of this. That's how, like, if you're picking Spawn, or what other comic movies did they do when they was kind of in '92, which kind of ran out of steam. But I know Spawn was out there, then they were looking for stuff while comics were hot, and then nothing really happened outside of Batman or something like that. But anyway, yeah, Batman Forever was around '95. Was it '95? Yeah, '95. So comic properties were hot, but then Marvel was toxic for years post Howard the Duck, where they were like, we can't do Marvel. These characters aren't the thing. But they did the Punisher. They would do the Punisher, and they do a terrible Punisher movie. It was just kind of odd, And I was also saying, we brought up that Michael Jackson was interested, and I was like saying he talked about doing the same plan as that Disney's doing. Do the movies, do amusement parks, and you can do it in all other media, that sort of thing. So that was kind of the angle. Just questioning it. It wasn't saying that it was totally wrong. It was just saying, as a corporate raider, if you're picking up, if you're trying to sell, you got Marvel in your hands. You say, what are we going to do first? We need to do movies. I got Captain America, Iron Man, and Blade. Let's do Blade. Only person who can see that is Wesley Snipes that it's going to work. What are you looking up?
Got the nod. I always thought part of the reason Blade got the nod, besides the toxicity level with Marvel, was that Blade was a more economical film to make than, say, Iron Man. I don't know. I mean, if they had, I don't know, because it's sort of like what they were doing with the Rings. Huh?
$45 million.
For what?
For Blade.
What about $45 million for Blade?
That's how much it cost to make Blade.
All right. I don't know how much it would have cost to make an Iron Man movie. And the other point I was going to make is I remember that the Lord of the Rings films, one of the reasons that those films finally got greenlit is because the special effects needed to make the film look good were finally there. Because before, these guys were like, well, how are we going to pull this film off with little people, with the stuff that needs to happen inside of the film? Because that's what they would have done. And then they were like, no, we got the special effects now, but we can actually just have the regular actors and we can make them look diminutive, on screen at the end of the day. So I'm not sure. I mean, even if they said, look, let's go gangbusters and do an Iron Man film, I have no idea what that film would have looked like, regardless of the money that they had put into it at the time.
Yeah, like that I can totally agree with that. It's just kind of strange that that the Marvel properties are just like, we keep having to hear that there was no chance, like where they were developing them with obviously the Image guys, then of course the Ultimates, which they then turned into the animated Avengers movie, which was based on the Ultimate stuff, even though the Heroes Reborn had Nick Fury in it, but then they were kind of waving their flag to Hollywood in 2000 with the Ultimates having Nick Fury as Sam Jackson. So they're like saying, we want to do movies. We're like, we're right here. We're really they're getting talent from movies to work on stuff, like Kevin Smith and a bunch of people in both Marvel and DC. So in my mind, I felt like they were going that route, but at the same time, yes, it wasn't something that they can immediately say, well, the hard part is they don't know outside of, I might be misremembering it, that they were going like that Rob Liefeld was saying he was going there selling his properties, and they were saying, comparing it to the sales of Marvel, basically telling you, don't do these Marvel things. Like the Avengers aren't selling at all. Look at the Youngblood thing. But that could be totally something that I'm only hearsay, because I can't remember where I got it from. But how did he know that these properties are that toxic? That's it's like the X-Men. They don't have a cartoon till a real cartoon that was successful till '92. Where you say, well, that should be.
We're not talking about. You keep going back to the '92. We're talking about the movies after the bankruptcy of '95, '96. We're talking about the Blade film came out '98, right? We're talking about the fact that the X-Men, when did that come out? 2001, 2000, 2001, and those were profitable, right? Right. And then they started doing all those other movies. And when did they do the one with the guy from Batman? What's his name? Ben Affleck. They did the Daredevil, right?
Oof,
they did the I don't know what year. What year was Daredevil?
You talking about X-Men, Daredevil, after Blade?
Daredevil.
It's like Matrix.
They did Spider-Man in 2002 with Sam Raimi. with Tobey Maguire.
But
Right?
The Spider-Man script was out there. It was the treatment was out there for a while.
Right, but they didn't own it. That's what I'm trying to say. Those were all licensing deals. It wasn't until they did the Iron Man that they were the ones having their own studios running the whole shebang. Before, those were all licensing deals to one degree or another, right? And that's the point we're talking about here, that it wasn't the top things. Yeah, of course they did Blade. Blade was something that no one, they figured a small bet on a niche market, and it paid off well. X-Men, I don't think they, it was popular, but I don't know if they were going to say, hey, this is going to pop. But it did pop, right? Under X-Men, under Singer, right? Then you have the Daredevil didn't pop. I don't know when Daredevil came out. You know when it came out, Cal?
You not.
Yeah, so that came out. That didn't do too well. But then you have the whole Sony Spider-Man that comes out in 2002. So that's like 4 years after Blade, and that blows up, right?
Yeah, the X-Men before that, didn't they? Wasn't the X-Men before that?
X-Men was before, yeah. But I'm saying first you have Blade, then you have the X-Men. I think you have the Daredevil before the Spider-Man. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But definitely you have the Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. And that, of course, is just boom. This is like astronomical movies being made. I think you said something about they wanted to do a movie about Brother Voodoo at one point, or Namor at one point, or something like that. One of you guys.
Was the old one? That was the old, when they initially said that they were going to see Shang-Chi, Black Panther. It was a bunch.
Yeah.
But Brother
Right.
Voodoo, but the initial thing was a very diverse thing. But I mean, that's what we were arguing before. We were talking about it before. In the X-Men, they were selling the X-Men on Ed Norton, Angela Bassett, was it Doug Ray Scott, and who else was and Kate Winslet. Those were the cast. That was the cast for the X-Men. When they were selling the movie, they were saying, "Oh, we're doing an X-Men movie with Ed Norton, Kate Winslet, Angela Bassett," and Angela Bassett was like, "They've been using my name for this, and then they didn't call me in to talk about the movie." So, but they sometimes use names like Tom Cruise being attached to Iron Man for a number of years. So even you could say even Wesley, but Wesley was actually actively developing those things. So.
And there was an excellent podcast, and we talked about, it was with the Journal, Gimlet Media, and they were talking about this whole Marvel, how Marvel became so famous. But one of the things we got to remember, when they decided to do the studio, it was back 2003, 2004. They raised almost $500 million from Merrill Lynch, the investment company, the brokerage company, and that was for characters like the Avengers, Black Panther, Captain America, Cloak and Dagger, Hawkeye, to do to do 10 movies based off of that. So that tells you something right there.
Let's go to, since it was an argument, let's go to ask everyone. Obviously, I'm saying you can sell. I can find something to sell Iron Man. You, Cal, you both answer this question. You're a company like either AOL, Disney, or Warner Brothers, and you're looking into getting into the comic book movie thing. Would you do Iron Man or Thor? Would you buy those characters to make a movie? You're looking for a movie. Would you say?
Well, I think we kind of preface this saying you can't use Spider-Man. You can't use the top one.
I'm just saying. I'm saying
you use anything. You're saying.
No, I'm saying just not picking. I'm saying, would you buy your equivalent of, with maybe MCI back then? Your equivalent of that. Would you buy Iron Man and make a movie out of it? And comic books. Would you do Iron Man?
Yeah, Iron Man first? No. And I think I said it here when we did it. If you look back I said, I don't know if this is going to be a success. Of all the characters that you're going through the dustbin looking for stuff, you're looking at Iron Man, but I was proven wrong. I saw the movie, I enjoyed it. What's name did a great job. I can say that right now. I don't know.
If Cal, all right, so there we go. Cal. Let's go to Cal.
I admit I was wrong.
Your MCI or whatever, something like that, AOL, would you do Iron Man? Would you buy Iron Man?
Do a movie with?
Yes, your first movie. Comics also.
Yeah, I'm talking about hindsight is 50-50.
I'm looking at this. Oh, man, if I'm looking at it from a company, I'm hoping I got people to advise me. But Iron Man is like Gadget Man, so I can make not just the movie, but I can make a whole bunch of money on these toys that I'm going to make based on this particular character. So yeah, Iron Man would be no problem. Notwithstanding the earlier earlier hurdle that I mentioned, that I don't know exactly how I would get it to screen, but people buy rights to films all the time that never get made. So yeah, Iron Man would be Iron Man of the stuff that they would have to offer would definitely be something that I would look to make. May not happen, but it would be definitely something that you would pick up for all of the potential that you should see in that particular character.
So instead of me declaring just total winner, the idea is that there is something that you could make from Iron Man. It's not as easy as me. Our argument is saying, what would you pick through Marvel outside of Spider-Man? That's the question you want to go. But that's more just us coming up. Well, what could we make successful out of what's left from Marvel that they haven't done movies with, which is a harder thing.
I would have thought, to me, when we first started talking about this, I thought if they had to do the whole thing, it would have been, if anything, they should have done the whole team at one shot, right? Clearly, again, I was wrong. The development of the individual characters turned out to work, because when we did it in DC and the Justice League, while the execution was not as we wanted it to be,
that the premise. See, I don't know. That's a very Hollywood approach to it. Well, let's throw them all in here, have like some team stuff going on, and we got a little bit of something for everybody. When historically, it starts with one character, and then you go from there. Even with DC, it starts with Superman, then you go from there. And you look at the most successful animation that they would have, it starts with who? They started with Batman, then they did Superman, then they did the Batman Beyond thing, they did a Zeta Effect, which had nothing to do with whatsoever. And then slowly but surely, they had introduced other characters and other things between those two particular series, and then you get Justice League. And then you get a great run and a great series out of Justice League at the end of the day. But usually historically, that stuff has been built to. It's not something, well, let's just go. Unless it's already, a team. Like, okay, we're getting the Fantastic Four. We're getting Alpha Flight. We're going to get Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos. And we already got 6-7 people over here, and that's how it works. Okay, you build to the Avengers. The X-Men would definitely be along that line. But with the other guys, like, okay, let's just do an Avengers movie. What's being done, what they did with the Avengers building up to it is what traditionally is done with these type of things. I don't understand where some people feel that, let's just jump to the end. They never did that in the comics. The only time you ever saw a team debut as a team, it was a team already. This was going to be a superhero comic or a comic book, and there are 5 people here, and it's already a team dynamic, as opposed to the Avengers or the Justice League of America, which is a different thing altogether.
I see your point.
I'd like to add that Cal said Alpha Flight without me offering it up. So he did say that.
Why don't you just say Power Pack 2? Huh?
Power Pack is another easy one.
It was a far more popular group than either of those. And you're going to use
Power Pack. I would go before Power Pack before Alpha. I would do that. I'm going with you. I'm agreeing.
My point is that if I was an executive back in 2000 when they're doing stuff, I would have said, let's do the Avengers. Why? Because we saw a hit film called X-Men with an ensemble cast. And I would say, hey, we can do something like this and replicate this right now. You know what I'm trying to say? If we just get the right mix of characters.
Boom. I don't disagree with the executive approach, whereas, look, we just scored with one team, let's do another team. However, and this is where you need some people, hopefully you do have some good advisors, people to come in and say, wait, that's a team already. These guys know. And then also it's like, but look at the money we're leaving on the table. The X-Men, there's only 1 or 2 characters that can actually carry a book on their own. The other teams that you're talking about, these guys have been carrying their own books for decades. Okay, when you look at the Avengers, that core group. So why do we want to jump into the team and do the spinoff out of it when it's the reverse that we should be doing? And that's where we see it successful with these comic books at the end of the day. That might work for TV where, okay, I do something like Three's Company or Cheers, and then, I spin off into Frasier, but that's not how we should be doing it at this point. I don't disagree that would be the executive thing. Look, did a team make money? That's just Hollywood. Cowboys are making money, more cowboy movies. Pirates are making money, more pirate movies. These team things, superheroes are making, look, okay, let's get some more out over there. But then you would hopefully have somebody to say, wait a second. We're going to lose money doing that. And we may not be as profitable as we want to be.
Look, we know that one of the things with Stan Lee is that he had these teams, individuals, when the comics weren't in print or popular, they would bring these characters into the Avengers, right? Okay, so we know that was one of the reasons they had that set up the way.
Wait a second. No,
Yo,
no.
you called that out,
No,
PD.
I didn't
We
say
had that
that.
discussion before.
No. I
Oh,
had a
now,
discussion that
don't let me.
Stan
I'm
Lee
taking
was
off my
doing
glasses. I'm
Stan
taking
Lee
off
was
my
doing
glasses.
another group, and then he decided, hey, I'm not going to hurt the sales of Iron Man and Thor by having them in this group. And the same thing. And then when they didn't have a title like Giant Man, he came back to the group
and brought him back.
And then Captain America left, and he got his own title, right?
And then when he lost his title, he came back to the group.
But that's only then.
That's what I'm saying. He came back.
Popularity.
You know, popularity.
No, the popularity was Joe Quesada saying that Spider-Man and Wolverine could be.
I put my glasses back on. Okay, Cal. A point I want to make. I don't want to go off the rails, but according to the official DC universe, it started with Wonder Woman. Okay, so going back on, you know, continuing on. You know, I'm glad that you guys do agree with what I'm saying.
What is going on right now?
What are you talking about? What bit of misinformation are you spreading now? What are you talking about?
I'm saying, according officially to DC, they did the whole timeline, remember? No. The whole timeline was set up, and they said they started
the movie timeline. The movie timeline, you're saying.
The timeline or DC Comics?
I'm just saying the movie timeline starts with Wonder Woman.
Okay. Even that is dubious at best. Because they didn't establish anything. They never established anything past the fact that she appeared, and then it was like, well, where was she when all this other stuff was going on? So I wouldn't necessarily want to stake a claim on that bit of information.
I'm just saying, DC said it. I'm not holding anything. It was a big thing. We were at the con. They said the whole shebang.
About the Jan Didio when he was saying the G5 or 5G. If I was a 5G. When he said, and Wonder Woman, he was being run out of the stadium, and 5G's coming, and Wonder Woman's the start of it. Don't kick me out.
Look, I don't recall him being kicked out because I think
maybe I had a little with that, but he was running out when he was saying it.
He was running because he knew there were going to be people after him after saying that. He was like, a good start.
I don't know where you guys. I was just making a point of what the official
timeline, Zack Snyder's supposed timeline, and use that as any sort of substantive information for an argument. At the end of the day, this is the guy who did a film where Darkseid came to Earth and then forgot where he left the anti-life equation. I don't think I would want to base anything on his information at the end of the day. That whole
George. How many times have you lost your keys and you didn't know where you put it? Okay, come on, that's right. You're trying to make it seem as though nobody can forget. Everybody remembers. You know full well you're using an air tag to remember where you get your stuff from, bro. Come on.
I don't get keys because I use a belt loop like most adults. Just use that key. You just put the keys on there. It's always attached to the trousers. You don't have to worry about it at the end of the day. But no, see, George Perez solved the whole. Well, I thought I can't remember what the pre-crisis situation was with Wonder Woman, but when George Perez was on the book, it was just like she had been around for about 18 years, and then she came to Man's World. This whole idea, she's been around for 5,000 years. It's so problematic at the end of the day because you were like, okay, so what have you been doing for 5,000 years? I've been honing my skills, fighting on Themyscira with all these Amazons. That's why I'm the best fighter in the world. Like how? You've been fighting the same people. What new arts have you learned at the end of the day? So that whole thing it was just troublesome to begin with. Dan Didio, he got himself a head start because they ran him not off that stage, but they also ran him out of DC Comics. So it was fine. I would not stake a claim based on that.
I'm saying here, Dan Didio, who was the publisher, chief editor.
You going from 2019?
Where do you see that date at?
I see the date. Like you gotta.
No one has retracted it. No one has retracted it. Well, it says it right here. DC releasing official new timeline establishing.
He already did Doomsday
as the first superhero. Okay.
According to that timeline, okay, Superman had a career as Superboy in the 1940s, and he was adventuring with the what are these again? The name escapes me at the end of the day. But he was venturing with like the Frankenstein monster and such from a weird war tales. You can't use that.
I mean, well, look, I'm just saying what the company's saying.
Oh, you didn't read it past that, did you? Yeah,
I read it. I'm saying it did. It's a pretty short article, bro. It's not that long.
Yeah, Petey, do you remember the name of that? What was it? It's like a Frankenstein. It's like what was it? It's like weird creatures or something.
No, I don't remember it.
Weird war tales. I can't remember the name of the group. But they were gonna have I was actually I was interested in seeing. Like, oh wow, they're gonna bring Superboy back, and he was adventuring with these guys in the 40s. I was like, all right, it's not the Legion, but hey, let me see how this whole thing works out. But that whole thing got scrapped, so you can't use that as any basis for anything.
That was going to be in a new 52?
No, that was supposed to be 5G.
Oh, 5G. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah,
they're already starting off on the weird. We got Wonder Woman, but we also got Superboy in this thing. So
it was, I mean, to be honest, I've always felt that they should have worked something else. So Superman is still the first superhero. He's the first guy who debuts, but then they do the whole crisis thing. You don't have the different Earths. And the way the time plays around is okay, he can't debut in 1938 and we'll still be running around here with Lois Lane in 2023. But I don't think they ever really put their head to the situation. They were just like, oh no, it's fine. We can just always have them debut modern times. But then like, okay, the first heroes of the JSA, that's back in the 19th, that's still back in the 1940s. So how do you rectify that? These guys are going to have been around almost 100 years. They don't all have superpowers. So how do you do that? So I liked some of the approach of trying to have like let's try to work with the longevity of the timeline that we have. But then some of the other stuff, of course, doesn't work. But I did like the fact that they were at least thinking about it and looking for some ways to approach it successfully.
Well, thank you, Cal. I think we've digressed a bit there. It was just a small point that was brought in that you guys once again trying to make it stop. But hey, we all agree. If we were the executives running Marvel at the time, we wouldn't have picked Iron Man. Spinnerak?
Out. Whatever, man.
Cal?
All right, we're out.